cruising at 31,000 feet over the barren expanse of the Canadian Rocky Mountains. A Boeing 787 Dreamliner suddenly shudders violently. The left engine displays flicker, cascade into alarming red warnings, and then go completely black. In the cramped maintenance office of Denver International Airport, a woman in a grease-stained flight suit calmly receives the distress call and quietly speaks into her headset. "I know exactly what's wrong, and I'm the only one who can talk them through it." The pilot has no idea that the voice guiding him through the next 18 minutes will come from the woman his airline rejected 9 times for the right seat. Her name was Dr. Alina Vasquez, and nobody at Denver International Airport saw her coming to work. She arrived at 4:47 a.m. every morning before the sun broke over the horizon, before the first pilots strutted through the crew lounges in their pressed uniforms and captain's hats. She wore a faded blue flight suit not because she was a pilot, but because she wasn't. The suit bore the insignia of Flight Systems Engineer, a title that meant she existed in the shadows of commercial aviation, maintaining the intricate nervous system of aircraft, while the captains received the glory. To the airline staff, Alina was simply the systems expert, the woman with the encyclopedic knowledge of hydraulic architecture, avionics integration, and structural metallurgy. Passengers never saw her. Her name appeared on no flight manifest, but every single aircraft that rolled down the tarmac had been signed off by Alina's inspection sheet. What few people knew was that Alina held a commercial pilot's license, an instrument rating, and a multi-engine type rating. She had logged over 1,200 hours of flight time in her 20s. She had sat in the left seat of a Cessna 172, felt the euphoric lightness of an aircraft responding to her input, and dreamed of the day she'd command a commercial airliner. That day never came. Between 2010 and 2017, Alina had applied to every major U.S. airline pilot training program. 16 applications, 16 rejections. Some were form letters, others included brutal honesty. "We're looking for candidates that fit our profile." Translation: male, ex-military, conventional background. One interviewer had actually told her, "You seem incredibly qualified, but frankly, we're worried about retention. You'll probably want to start a family." The final rejection crushed something fundamental inside her. She walked away from the flight line and never looked back. She pivoted to engineering, earned her doctorate in aerospace systems, and buried herself in the technical minutiae that governed aviation safety. If the airlines wouldn't let her fly, then at least she'd be the person who made sure every aircraft was safe enough for other people to fly. For 8 years, Alina had been invisible, a ghost in a blue flight suit hidden in a maintenance office, speaking to pilots through scratchy radio connections they could barely hear. She had made peace with the bitterness, or at least she thought she had. It was a Tuesday morning in March when everything changed. Alina was sitting in the pre-flight systems office at Denver International, monitoring telemetry data from a Boeing 7879 Dreamliner scheduled to depart for Vancouver at 10:15 a.m. The aircraft, registration N847DA, had been in her care for the past 3 years. She knew every rivet, every circuit board, every redundant system built into its composite frame. The captain was a seasoned veteran named Richard Hartley, a 48-year-old former Air Force pilot who had logged over 12,000 hours. The first officer was a younger pilot, fresh from regional airlines, still learning the nuances of wide-body operations. Neither had ever spoken to Alina directly. She communicated exclusively through the maintenance department. Alina pulled up the pre-flight diagnostic for N847DA. The routine scan showed all systems nominal engine parameters stable, hydraulic pressures within limits, electrical architecture functioning perfectly. The 787 was the crown jewel of modern commercial aviation and aircraft, so advanced, so computerized that pilots largely just supervised while computers did the flying. She had made 17 small recommendations for preventive maintenance, 14 of which had been approved and completed. 3 had been deferred by the airline's maintenance director, a harried man named Bruce Patterson, who was perpetually trying to reduce costs. One of those deferred items nagged at Alina constantly. The left engine's oil cooler seals were showing subtle signs of degradation. Nothing critical, not yet. But Alina's predictive algorithms suggested they would fail catastrophically within the next 300 flight hours if not replaced. The replacement would cost the airline $47,000 and require 8 hours of maintenance labor. She had recommended it. Bruce Patterson had deferred it. Alina watched as the aircraft pushed back from the gate at 10:08 a.m., right on schedule. She listened to them taxi toward runway 35 left. She watched the radar blip as N847DA lifted off at 10:21 a.m., wheels up, climbing steadily into the clear morning sky. And then, 47 minutes later, the first alert came through. The alert was subtle, barely a whisper in the digital chatter that constantly filled the maintenance office. A minor fuel pressure fluctuation on the left engine, normal parameters, but unusual pattern. Elena's eyes narrowed. She immediately pulled up the live telemetry stream for N847DA. The fuel pressure on the left engine was fluctuating between 52 and 58 psi when it should have been rock solid at 55 psi. The variations were small easily within acceptable limits, but they were rhythmic, pulsing. Elena's hands flew across her keyboard, pulling up historical maintenance logs for the engine. Fuel control unit replacement, 6 months ago. Seal integrity check, nominal. Oil cooler. Wait. She clicked into the oil cooler diagnostic. The seals she had flagged for replacement. The temperature in the oil cooler circuit was rising. Slowly, incrementally, but steadily climbing. 127 degrees, 131 degrees, 134 degrees. An oil cooler seal failure wouldn't affect fuel pressure directly, but if the cooling system was beginning to break down, fluid could be migrating into systems that shared common bulkheads. Elena's stomach tightened. She immediately picked up the radio and called the dispatcher. "Dispatch, this is Systems. I need you to relay a message to N847DA immediately. Stand by for non-normal procedure." The dispatcher's voice came back, confused. "Systems, what's the issue?" "Flight 847 is already in cruise." "Suspected progressive oil cooler seal degradation on left engine," Elena said, forcing clinical precision into her voice even as her mind raced. "I need the captain to run an immediate diagnostic on the left engine oil cooler circuit. They need to monitor fuel pressure stability. If seal failure is occurring, fuel contamination could lead to catastrophic engine failure." There was a pause. "Systems, those parameters are all reading nominal on our monitoring station." "They will," Elena replied, her voice tight. "The degradation is slow. The computer won't flag it until it's critical. Please relay the message now." Elena heard the dispatcher key the radio and transmit to the aircraft in cruise. She listened as he explained the situation to Captain Hartley. There was skepticism in the pilot's response. "Dispatch, we have no indications of any anomalies. Engine parameters are all green. Oil temperatures nominal. N847DA. The issue is subtle," Elena cut in, her voice suddenly breaking into the pilot's radio frequency. "This is the systems engineer speaking. You need to manually cycle the left engine oil cooler inlet valve and monitor the fuel pressure response. If I'm right, you'll see a transient pressure spike when you do it." There was a long pause. "Who is this?" Captain Hartley's voice carried an edge of irritation. "Elena Vasquez, Flight Systems Engineering, Denver Base. I've been monitoring your aircraft's telemetry for the last 4 minutes. You have a slow-developing seal failure on your left engine oil cooler. It hasn't triggered any alerts yet because the degradation is gradual. But if that seal fails completely, oil will contaminate your fuel system. Left engine will flame out." Elena heard the subtle shift in the captain's voice. The irritation evaporated, replaced by focused attention. "Roger, Systems. Running oil cooler inlet valve cycle." Now Elena watched the telemetry stream as Captain Hartley manipulated the valve from the cockpit. The fuel pressure spiked from 55 psi to 71 psi, held for 2 seconds, and dropped back to 55 psi. It was exactly what Elena had predicted. "I see it," Captain Hartley reported. "Transient pressure spike. That's not normal." "That confirms the seal failure," Elena said, her mind already 3 steps ahead. "The oil cooler seal is breached. Oil is being pumped into the fuel circuit every time pressure builds up. Left engine is running on increasingly contaminated fuel." Suddenly, a third voice broke into the radio frequency. It was Bruce Patterson, the maintenance director. "Systems, this is maintenance control. I'm overriding your diagnosis. That aircraft was signed off as fully airworthy this morning. Your telemetry is showing normal parameters. There's no emergency here." Elena's jaw clenched. "Bruce, the oil cooler seal I flagged for replacement 6 months ago is failing. The pilot just confirmed it with the inlet valve cycle. We need to get this aircraft on the ground immediately." "Absolutely not," Patterson shot back. "We're not declaring an emergency based on speculation from a ground-based engineer. That aircraft is carrying 187 passengers, and we don't ground aircraft based on hunches." "This isn't a hunch," Alina said, her voice dropping dangerously low. "This is predictive analysis based on historical degradation patterns I identified in March, which I evaluated and determined the risk was acceptable," Patterson replied coldly. "The aircraft is within all operational parameters." "You're reading ghosts, Alina. Stand down." Alina keyed the radio and spoke directly to Captain Hartley. "Captain, I'm going to give you explicit maintenance parameters. Left engine oil cooler temperature is currently 147 degrees and climbing at approximately 2 degrees per minute. When it reaches 165 degrees, the seal compound will begin to thermally degrade. At 175 degrees, the seal will fail completely. Once that happens, oil will flood the fuel system. The left engine will lose power within 90 seconds. How long do I have?" Captain Hartley's voice was ice calm. Alina did the math. Oil climbing 2 degrees per minute, currently at 147. Time to critical failure, 14 minutes. 14 minutes, Captain, maybe 16, if the climb rate slows. "I want to know who I'm listening to," Captain Hartley said. "What are your credentials?" Alina closed her eyes. This was the moment. The moment when everything she had buried would come spilling out. "Captain, my name is Dr. Alina Vasquez. I hold a PhD in Aerospace Systems Engineering. From MIT, I have a commercial pilot's license with instrument and multi-engine ratings. I have logged 1,247 hours as pilot in command. I designed the predictive maintenance algorithm that caught your seal degradation, and I have been tracking your aircraft's telemetry in real time for the past 6 minutes." There was a pause, a long one. Then Captain Hartley's voice returned, and it was different, respectful. "Dr. Vasquez, what are my options?" Alina was already ahead of him. "You need to divert to the nearest suitable airport immediately. Fort Collins Municipal has a 7,000-foot runway about 80 miles south-southwest of your current position. I can guide you through a modified descent profile to minimize thermal stress on that engine. If we can get you on the ground before the seal fails, the engine will shut down but remain intact." "I understand," Captain Hartley said, requesting diversion clearance to Fort Collins now. But that's when everything got exponentially worse. The telemetry data suddenly spiked. Oil cooler temperature jumped from 151 degrees to 159 degrees in the span of just 30 seconds. The climb rate had accelerated catastrophically. "Captain, the degradation is happening faster than predicted," Alina said, her voice tight. "Your descent needs to be immediate, not gradual. I need you to declare a full emergency and request emergency descent to Fort Collins." In the cockpit, Captain Hartley didn't hesitate. "Denver Center, N847DA, declaring an emergency. Left engine oil system failure, requesting immediate descent to Fort Collins Municipal." The air traffic controller's voice came back instantly. "N847DA, Roger, your emergency. Descent clearance granted. Descend and maintain 10,000 feet. Fort Collins is 42 miles on your current heading." Alina watched the altitude data change as Captain Hartley pulled the nose down. The descent rate increased. Alina looked at her temperature calculations. Oil temperature was now 163 degrees, and climbing faster, they weren't going to make it. "Captain, I need you to prepare for a single-engine approach," Alina said rapidly. "Your left engine is going to fail. When it happens, you're going to lose significant thrust. The asymmetrical forces are going to try to roll you left. You'll need aggressive right rudder to keep the nose straight. The good news is, your right engine is completely healthy. You can fly this approach on one engine." "Understood, Doctor," Captain Hartley replied, standing by for engine failure. The temperature hit 171 degrees, then 173. At 175.2 degrees, the left engine's fuel feed suddenly went to zero. The engine flamed out with a sickening metallic groan. "Engine failure confirmed," Captain Hartley said, his voice absolutely calm. "I have positive control. Continuing approach to Fort Collins." Alina watched the radar blip as N847DA continued its descent, now on a single engine, 28 miles from the airport. "Approach N847DA is currently 28 miles out with left engine failure. Requesting vectors for final approach, N847DA turned left, heading 280. descend to 5,000 feet. Expect vectors for runway 33, left. The aircraft banked left, the single right engine straining to maintain control. Alina could see all the parameters redistributing as the autopilot compensated 12 miles. The Fort Collins Airport was now in visual range, a small ribbon of concrete sprawling across the high desert. Captain Hartley descended through 6,000 feet, then 5,000. N847DA, turn right heading 330, descend to 3,000 feet. Cleared for visual approach, runway 33 left. Roger, turning right, descending to 3,000. Cleared visual approach runway 33 left. Alina watched the altitude data as Captain Hartley made the final turn toward the runway. The descent was picture perfect. In less than 4 minutes, they would be on the ground, and then Alina saw something that made her blood run cold. The second engine's fuel pressure was starting to fluctuate. No, the contamination hadn't been isolated. The right engine, their only lifeline, was beginning to ingest contaminated fuel. Captain, right engine fuel pressure is becoming unstable. You need to land immediately. Do not delay approach. In the cockpit, Captain Hartley was already aware. Approach N847DA is going to need to expedite this approach. Right engine fuel system showing contamination. N847DA, understand. You're currently 8 miles from threshold, cleared for immediate landing. Reduce speed as necessary. Captain Hartley pushed the nose down more aggressively. The aircraft accelerated, the right engine still holding but clearly struggling. 3,000 feet, Alina called out. You're doing perfect. Just keep it coming. 2,000 feet. The runway was growing larger in the windscreen. 1,500 feet. The right engine coughed. Just once, a brief hesitation in the fuel flow. 1,000 feet. Come on, baby, Captain Hartley whispered to the aircraft. Just a little longer. 500 feet. Clear of obstacles. You're lined up perfectly. 100 feet, 50 feet, 30 feet. The main gear touched the runway with a gentle kiss of tires against concrete. The nose wheel followed milliseconds later. Captain Hartley immediately deployed the speed brakes and began applying reverse thrust on the right engine. The aircraft decelerated smoothly, the right engine still holding, still feeding power, even as contaminated fuel flowed through its system. 100 knots, 75 knots, 50 knots. The Boeing 787 rolled to a complete stop on the runway of Fort Collins Municipal Airport safely, with all 187 passengers alive. In the Denver maintenance office, Alina finally allowed herself to exhale. Her hands were shaking. Sweat soaked through her blue flight suit. She had done it. She had saved 189 lives, and nobody at the airline would ever know her name. Captain Richard Hartley made sure that changed. By the next morning, Alina's story had spread through the aviation community like wildfire. The NTSB sent investigators. The FAA launched a formal inquiry. The airline CEO personally called Alina to thank her. Captain Hartley flew back to Denver specifically to meet her in person, and when he did, he rendered a formal military salute, a gesture of absolute respect from one skilled professional to another. The younger pilots at Denver started referring to Alina as Dr. V, the woman who sees what nobody else can see. Alina never became a commercial airline pilot, but she became something much more valuable. She became the woman every pilot in America called when they didn't understand what their aircraft was trying to tell them. She became the voice in the radio that pilots trusted more than their instruments. 8 years of invisibility had been redeemed in 6 minutes of absolute clarity.